Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422. At Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. With me in studio is the lawmaker representing Kitui Central constituency, Dr. Makalimulu, a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly. Franklin Mukwanja is the executive director at the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and Silvanus Osoro is the majority whip at the National Assembly and the MP representing South Mugirango constituency. I come to you on this, Dr. Makalimulu. Now that some proposals were dropped, let's come to the motor vehicle circulation tax, for instance, where the chairperson of the committee had said that in itself sought to realize about 58 billion Kenya shillings in the financial year 24-25. Given that it's out, what does it then mean in terms of the financial year? Does this then increase the aspect about now raising the expansion of the financial year by plus 58 billion Kenya shillings? I mean, what will give in?
No, what has happened, and I think this is why the Kenya Kwanza government is between a hard place and a rock. Is, you remember last week we did approve the budget estimates for 2024-2025. The report was approved. We went through the Committee of Supplies, which also passed through Parliament. The only thing now remaining is appropriation bill, which will be coming to the House next week. So what it means is any amendments you make to the finance bill, unless you come up with a counter proposal to finance that gap, then they will lead to a financing gap. Now, when you have a financing gap, there are about two things you can do. One of the things you can do is, if it will be possible, you review your expenditure proposals in terms of what you want to spend in. So it means the proposed expenditure items could easily be reviewed, where you leave some out of the coming budget, so that you balance, so that that financing gap is actually made by reducing some of the proposed expenditure items. The other way out would be you borrow more, meaning whatever borrowing levels we had approved, then you need to come back to Parliament to change them so that it allows you to borrow more. And looking at where we are as a country now and as an economy, you will agree with me that borrowing is almost like out of reach for us. Because if you have been following the debate, in terms of public debt, repayments, we're actually almost doing 62% of every 100 shillings. So which means you don't have a lot of capacity to borrow. The other thing is also making it very difficult is that, you know, we've already approved the borrowing levels or ceiling as a house through the medium-term debt strategy. So we did fix the figures, and I think we allowed a borrowing of about 560 billion. With the domestic about 320, then external about 2 something. Now,
which is a drastic drop in terms of the deficit.
Drastic. Now, with that scenario now, the question is, if the government was to go for borrowing, then automatically there will be challenges because the ceiling is already approved by the House. Now, we have already approved then the other side of the expenditure side by passing the Committee of Supplies. So even technically, would also be a challenge because it's like the House has resolved on this matter. So it's like, do you now bring back this matter through the Appropriation Act bill? And the law is very clear that the appropriation bill should be strictly aligned to the report of the Budget Committee. So these are the challenges. And that's why you see, that's what I was saying, to sort out that matter so that they are not in that fix. They have proposed some reductions, which are very attractive to Kenyans, but they have also brought in additional levies to fill that gap, which, from where I sit, they're actually even worse than what was in the bill. And as I told you earlier, for example, let's take that the motor vehicle levy of 2.5, which was supposed to generate about 58 billion. If you ask yourself, the percentage of Kenyans who have cars in this country, I'm sure we all agree is a very low percentage. Kenyans who have cars, which means even if you boast this, at a primary level, it will affect only people who have cars. what I call primary level. Secondary level, you'll have a trickle-down effect, which would have affect many Kenyans out there. But you also ask yourself, how many Kenyans travel every day using public means? I'm sure if you go to a rural setting, you might find in a whole village of about 5,000, it's only about 10 who travel on a day-to-day basis, which means a very low percentage. Now, in a situation where you propose to increase the fuel levy by 9 shillings, once you touch fuel levy, you touch all the sectors of the economy, and more so, the productive sectors of this economy. Okay. Which means, Ayubu, once the cost of production increases of all the goods we produce in the country, the 50 million plus Kenyans will be affected by this additional levy. So while earlier you are targeting a very small percentage of the population, now you are targeting everybody in the economy. So the question is, do you do better when you target a small proportion of the population, people who are to some extent middle level because they are car owners? Now you are lowering the targeting even to the lowest of the level in terms of income.
So is this then zero-sum rate?
It's not even zero-sum. It makes the thing worse. For me, that's why even now our young people have more reason to go back to the streets and tell the Kenya Kwanza they have done nothing. That's the thing. It just says, initially, I was targeting you and the people on this table. Okay. Now you push it to the guy in Kikomba selling mutumba, because he has to eat. That will be coming from some production line somewhere, and our economy is so much dependent on fuel. Okay. Fuel in terms of production. So we will be unpacking this, and that's what I was saying earlier. I don't know whether you saw our Azimio press release. Yeah.
How much of this, before we go to the press release, because I need to take Franklin and Osoro's accounts as well, how much then of this in terms of the source is proving to be very problematic? The Treasury Principal Secretary was here on Thursday night last week with my colleague Sam, and unable and at pains to explain the source of, for example, why this was introduced in the finance bill. And yesterday the chairperson of the committee had deflected the ball back to the Treasury, saying probably they are in a better position to explain why it was first contained in the bill. Who is making up all these proposals?
Maybe Honorable Solo will tell us, but you know I'm in the budget committee. Yeah. And I can tell you for sure, I've been doing these budgets for the last 11 years in Parliament. This time, there is serious confusion in terms of who originates what. And that's why you see Treasury says we don't know about it. You saw the other day you asked, the PS was asked that question here, he could not answer. When you ask the financier, the same situation. So I think there's a team somewhere outside the Treasury and outside the KRA, which is making the budget. And this is the team which is causing confusion.
And who is the team?
Initially,
in your view?
Initially, you remember Governor Vuke? Yeah. There's a team he used to head in State House before he was made the governor. I think the remnants of that team are the people causing this confusion.
Okay. Yes, Franklin, I'll come to you, Soro.
You first have to rescue me by a proper introduction. I am not a member of Parliament yet. Yes. But I'm also receiving a barrage of messages. Okay. Already. But let me deliver the message. You're
not spared either. Yes.
Let me deliver that message, then I come to the policy incoherency that I see. That I tell them, I'm certain that they are these members of Parliament, that Mukate and car tax were not there before. Their being removed is not a favor to Kenyans. That's number one. Two is that the real problem with especially the Gen Z is the Data Protection Act. And then the issue of health access taxation. I think we'll deserve some answers in that regard. But you will recall that if you look at the revisions yesterday around the e-teams, you know, saying the avocado, the small-scale farmers, who are and largely small businesses with a turnover of less than a million shillings should not be registered with e-teams. But when you go to the income tax, you'll see that from 1st of January 2024, all any tax deductible should be generated from the e-teams to be considered. But then you have done that, and you said the bigger businesses will continue. Yeah. But the question that begs is, what then happens where the bigger businesses with a high turnover are in business with the small businesses. Whose responsibility is it to declare the turnover? Are we saying then that there will be no business between small and big businesses? And these policy incoherences must be very clearly defined so that Kenyans can understand where some of this reasoning is coming from. But the most important thing that we have to ask ourselves is, how do we address this confusion? I saw the president, part of his brief to his parliamentary group, saying that it is out of this conversation that Kenyans are aware that some things are happening. First, I think that is not true, because Kenyans bestowed themselves these processes through the Constitution of 2010, and that also followed by the Public Finance Management Act. And the confusion is purely an administrative issue that this government, this regime, has to clearly deal with, so that Kenyans can be able to adequately follow the process and make proper input.
Yes, Honorable Soro, earlier on before we embarked on the break, you said that there were some proposals contained in the bill that had made you, even as the chief whip, hold views against them, unlike some of the proposals that were contained in the bill in 2023, now an act of parliament. In terms of the specification, then, do you then mean that the 2023 proposals in the finance bill later passed by parliament did not birth as much pressure from the public as 2024 did?
Not really. Actually, 2023, 2024 imposed to us more pressure than this one. This I must say, because that one touched mostly on the pay slips, and you understand what civil servants go through. It was about the housing levy and everything. This one is fairly okay. It's not as people want to make it look like. But even before I get to that, Ayub, you see, there is something that I really need people to understand, and I want to demystify a little bit. Even Honorable Makali Mulu can agree with me slightly, although he's, from the point, from where he sits now, he has to play populist politics now.
Not really. I'm serious.
It's understandable. It's understandable because he's a member from the opposition and he's putting government at check.
Watching me.
Because when you look at, I need to speak now to the local person back in the village, that when you wake up in the morning and say you need a road done, you're actually saying we need to be taxed. Because that road must be done through your taxes. When you graduate and get a TSC number and you say you need employment, you are ideally saying, please get some place you can tax so that I get employed. When an intern teacher goes to the streets and say, make us permanent and pensionable, he is simply telling government, can you create some place, can you expand the tax base so that you can employ me also? I mean, that is the whole thing. When in the village somebody says, I need electricity, we do not have last mile connectivity, our village is in blackout, you are simply saying, please, tax us. That is what it means, because government runs through your taxes. And the Kenyan public must know that, so that you don't make it look like you're demonizing government. It's some kind of devil somewhere that wakes up in the morning and squeezes you. No, that is not true. This year's budget, which Honorable Makali Mulu was part of the team that, he sits in the budget committee and he understands it, is to a tune of 4 trillion shillings. This year's budget. 2.3 trillion goes to the executive, where 1.7, about 1.7 or 1.6 thereabout, is on the recurrent, recurrent expenditure on salaries and those kind of things. That civil servant that sits in the office and complains that I need a job group raise from job group N to job group whatever, I need to be promoted, is covered in that 1.7. Like you've been promoted and you need salary, is covered in that amount of money of recurrent expenditure. That policeman, that teacher is in that 1.7. In fact, out of the 2.3, we only have about 700 billion for development, which is also lower from the point of the debt that we have in terms of pending bills and such kind of things. I want really to demystify. Yeah. When the county government say we need more money, it is covered in this 4 trillion. Then we raise it from 385 billion to 400 billion. It is in this 4 trillion, you know. So when you add 2.3 and then you add 400 billion, it is 2.7 trillion. Then we are left with about 1.1 trillion. This goes to the consolidated accounts. And ironically, part of that 1.1, 180 billion now goes to the pension. That teacher at home that says I've retired and I've been waiting for my pension for 5 years, that 1.18 billion, 4 trillion, 180 billion of that 4 trillion is to pay for that pension teacher. And then the 62 shilling that he said to 100 covers now 1.1, which goes to pay our former loans. And sadly, that amount that goes to pay our former loans, to a tune of about 1 trillion, we are now paying interest because we are in, we've really, you know, we are in arrears. We are paying interest. We haven't even started paying the principal. Okay. So why am I saying all this? Yes. You need to get a source to fund this 4 trillion, to pay this salary, to do that road, to do that electricity. Thank you. That is the formation of the finance bill. 2 key points then. That you have pointed out. First, as though it sounds that getting electricity, getting water, getting education, getting healthcare first is a right for Kenyans, not a privilege. And the Kenyan people have been paying their fair share of taxes. So let's come to the aspect about the 3 key points that come out of your submissions, which first is proper management of the public coffers. Yes. Second is the aspect about wage bill. Yes. Because we are talking about wage bill revenue ratio of 46%. Yes. The law says should not be more than 35%. Exactly. And then you talked about debt. All this boils down to leadership. You are the National Assembly. Yes. And to quote the president when he attended the presidential debate on the eve of the elections in 2022, he said, I think we need to interrogate these 15 different taxes, which one we can put aside so that, like other countries, we can limit taxation on fuel, and you know the impact of fuel. Take, for example, the Deputy President William Ruto said, VAT, I think we need to rethink the value-added tax on fuel. That was the latest inclusion on taxes on fuel, and I think it was very controversial. This is in the build-up to the presidential elections. You sit in the National Assembly. The Kenyan people are watching you. They need actions. They need to address the wage bill. The Deputy President is on record saying that more than 2,000 ghost employees have no qualifications in government. This needs an action. Nothing followed up from the wage bill conference. You talk about debt. It's because of the leadership we have as to why we are here. And you talk about, accountability. Why not then manage what we have in terms of accountability? Exactly. Seal all the loopholes and corruption that continues to affect the public coffers. You're right. These are issues you can address, but you are deflecting the attention back to the Kenyan public. They are not the problem, Honorable Osoro. You are right, by the way. You are very right. And address these problems then. That is a process. Can you wake up one morning? You see, recently, and it's very important you even raise that issue. Last week, the TSC gave a circular firing or terminating the contracts of all the intern teachers that were in the streets protesting. By the way, that could have really cut us a bit of some wage bill, right? But look, he is a member of parliament, Dr. Makalu Mulu. Can tell you his phone right now is full of messages from those intern teachers. Oh, please talk to TSC. We need our permanent and pensionable jobs. This budget of the 4 trillion is going to employ 46,000 of them and 20,000 others. So total of 66,000 teachers. So who is that you want? How do you want to cut the overheads? Who is that you want fired so that the wage bill can go down? For example, why are you... that is why, from where we sit... Good proposal. We have... Let me give you one example. We have... Then why are you then proposing to create the positions of chief administrative secretaries, for example? That is an ink drop in the ocean. How many billions? It is an ink drop, and the effect, the outcome of their, you know, their input in terms of service delivery and helping government run affairs vis-a-vis the output and the expense in terms of... I mean, trust me, it really doesn't realize. That's the architecture. But I wanted to make an argument. And you are a lawyer in this case. Okay, Haja Sangon, because we need to get... This is an accountability show so that we get straightforward with the Kenyan people. Yes. The architecture we gave unto ourselves, Katiba,
clearly stipulates the positions as provided for the cabinet secretary and the principal secretary. When we departed from the old system of governance pre-2010, why then, for example, do we need the chief administrative secretaries? I mean, in the end, they have to gobble up. They need mortgages. They have the rights to qualify for that. They will be getting cars. They will be getting salary, and they're entitled to medical scheme. This is money, if diverted elsewhere, can employ teachers, can set up our healthcare system, and can set up our education system.
It can't even go beyond 500 million. It can't even go beyond 200 million. But even that.
You mean that's no money?
It means.
Okay.
You know, we'll cut a section of some recurrent expenditure, and that has actually been done. The unnecessary buying flowers in the offices, you know, people moving around with their PAs and everything. So it is really not ideally adding a burden to the Kenyan. It is deflecting a bit of some benefits to the other office bearers so that it can be cost sharing between the two offices, between the CS and the CISS. So there is nothing extra. I mean, this 4 trillion budget is not going to go to 4.5 trillion because of the CISS. Let's confine ourselves within this budget as we are talking about.
But they're still taking home money.
We confine ourselves within this. You know, my point is this. Yeah. Kenyans then have an option to either stop, you know, we have an option. We either avoid paying taxes and focus on borrowing and kill the economy, or pay taxes, slightly tighten our belts, slightly, and especially where it matters most. For example, tell me how wrong it is when in this finance bill we propose that instead of you importing a motor vehicle, a fully assembled motor vehicle from China, a fully assembled motor vehicle in China, you can buy a local assembled motor vehicle in Kenya. What does that mean? It means the local manufacturer, the person who owns a factory that assembles motor vehicles in this country, will be able to employ 10 people or 20 people than you, an individual, who goes to China and brings about 100 motor vehicles and sells them to this in this country at a cheaper price, very cheap price, at the expense of the job creation. So that is what this finance bill is all about. Then what we've done is we've raised the excise duty on such fully assembled products from China. An example is diaper, the debate that we were all raising here, the diapers and everything. Mm-hmm. It is ironical that most of the diapers that we preferably buy because of the cost, because of the price, are from India. We can't even authenticate their standard, their standards in terms of quality and everything. Because they are cheap, Kenyans opt to buy them from India. What you are saying, we have raised excise duty from diapers and sanitary pads from other countries. That ideally means the local manufacturers' products will go low. The cost of the local manufactured products will go low. People in the factories will be employed. So we will close business as a... Get you.
We'll talk about the cost of production because that is another debate altogether. Yes, had a point.
Yeah, Abdulkadir, I think with representatives like Osoro, this regime does not need anyone to paint it in negative light. Honestly, we have continuously seen that this regime has been fond of bastardizing expert opinion and making sure that the explanations are the ones that carry the day and without any justification. When Osoro explains things, you can see clearly that the emphasis is on expenditures of government. But we are in a social contract that we entered into as Kenyans with this regime in 2022 by electing them. That on one hand, they have the obligation to tax us. And Kenyans of all walks of life have no problem paying taxes. We like it or not, until death do us part from us. But Kenyans are only emphasizing on how do we sustain essential public service delivery, which this government and previous governments have continuously struggled. But because we have this regime, we want to ask those questions. When you have the reports such as the Auditor General talking about some salaries you know, of state officers being more than it is expected. What has Osoro's, you know, parliament and him being the chief whip of the majority party done with those suggestions? When we have His Excellency the President fluffing on explanations about his costs on international trips, including the very recent one to the US, on one hand, you know, it didn't cost more than 70 million shillings. On the other hand, my friends helped me. We had 20 million and then we paid 10. What are we talking about? When Osoro says that the hiring of chief administrative secretaries is actually a non-issue because they don't earn much. These are people whose salary scale has been put at 700,000 plus. They will be afforded vehicles. They will need aids. If you look at the ripple effect on the ballooning of the recurrent expenditure, then we cannot be listening to these issues. Look at the Supreme Court. It has made a decision about the legality of the Constituency Development Fund. But these elected leaders, regardless of how we have seen the Constituency Development Fund perform before, we bestowed ourselves a devolved system. Where do we get the audacity to force it through, bludgeon it through, by amending the law simply because we want some money to interface? And these ring-fenced costs are the ones denying Kenyans sufficient resources for public service delivery. Okay. And these are issues that we have to really continuously highlight, that the politicians are not willing to speak on them, and Kenyans want this conversation about taxes. You have the obligation to tax us, but you have the responsibility
to safeguard,
to make sure that we get and have access to essential public services.
Yes, Dr. Makali.
Yeah, you know, a couple of points. Let's ask ourselves. Currently, we have a Finance Act 2023, which had proposed some also taxes to be collected. And the taxes have been collected for the last 1 year. We have only 2 weeks to the end of the financial year. We still have a revenue gap of about 300 billion with the current Finance Act, which means any right-thinking person would have asked themselves first, why was it that we didn't achieve the targeted revenue using the current Finance Act? And on the basis of that analysis, then you will be able to pick which areas you expect to collect more, you collected less, and find out why. Now, what has happened over time is the more you tax people, the more they think of alternatives in terms of tax evasion, in terms of changing their consumer behavior, because human beings are rational. So if I've been consuming meat twice, I may decide to do once in a month. If I've been fueling my car, the big car, but I decide to go for the small car so that I take less fuel. So these are some things you can't run away from. Now, informed by that, already using that as a base, then you come with another bill which proposes to collect additional 3 or 5. Which means currently, even as we are discussing, we have a financing gap without this act, which will be about 600 billion. So you can see from the word go, you are planning to get it wrong, from the word go. And I think that's why Kenyans are saying, please step back a bit and ask yourselves, where are we? You have been expecting us to pay taxes. We have not managed, even though we are willing to pay, because you can't tax people beyond the capacity to pay. So they're telling you, why? Step back. So that's why I said earlier, if we took a bit of time and looked at where are we spending this money as a country? Honorable Sol has mentioned a number of issues where we are spending the money. But I can tell you in terms of prioritization, there are some which are high in the line. There are some which are very low in the line. And if you are to list all of them and say which ones are high in the line, so maintain those ones in the budget, the ones which are very low in the line, remove them or push them to the next financial year. For example, I saw somebody, one of the very young ladies, and that's what I'm saying, Kenyans are so determined and, you know, to get this thing right. She was saying, we've seen you put some money for renovation of the Deputy President's office. Can you push that just to the next year? So that this year, we say that money is not going to be part of our budget, so that by that you relieve some of this burden from Kenyans. So to me, I'm saying, if you looked at the expenditure prioritization, we could easily make a saving there and save Kenyans. This has also been taxed more. The other area which I've really raised, and I think this, to me, this is where the problem is, are issues of accountability. Accountability issues, which are tied closely to integrity issues, which are tied very closely to corruption issues, and you can't run away from. It's not a secret. And Honorable Osoro, you know this because we are in Parliament with you, and you spend more time with the guys I'm going to mention than me. There are guys in this country who are putting watches worth 10 million. A watch. What is the work of a watch? To tell you the time. There are guys in this country who have built worthy millions of shillings. And you ask yourself, these are the same guys in the 12th parliament who have Osoro, he knows them.
You are wearing Batangoma.
Who could not even wear a watch worthy 10K. So the thing is, when you look at the way some of us, Kenyans, the opulence way of living, the largest way of living, you ask yourself, is this the way you expect such a country where we are in terms of development? Is this the kind of lifestyle you expect people in this kind of economy to live? So what am I saying short? I'm saying some of the expenditure items, the accountability issue you are raising, Ayub,
yes.
If we took it seriously and we became more strict in terms of how people are using public resources, how many governors do we have in the courts now are waiting to be charged on corruption-related issues? Out of the 47 for the last 2 terms, you have about 15 who have cases. What does that tell you? It tells you that we have some oars which need to be sealed. And unless we do that, we will continue having ballooning expenditure items. So the other item which is important.
When you say unless we, because you use the...
Yeah, we're using the word we because we are all in it.
Yeah, I mean...
This is not a responsibility of Parliament, it is a responsibility of all Kenyans.
Yeah,
Kenyans, the way we are saying enough is enough with the taxes. We need to see Kenyans in the streets saying enough is enough with corruption.
Okay.
And in a situation where you can't really... You know, there's something called lifestyle audit. I mean, this country will be talking about lifestyle audit for how long? Many years.
When you say we, Honorable Makali, because this is very interesting, is that the Kenyan people delegated power to you, Osoro, 300 and in total 416 members of the bicameral parliament.
Yes.
And the problem is that the parliament where you sit, Honorable Osoro, you, Dr. Makali, has been less than impressive. And public trust is at an all-time low, despite the powers that you have been granted. And in many of the cases, you have ignored all the red flags, incapacitating your own capacity. For example, these are things that have been building up from as early as when the century had started in 2000. April 2003, the then planning minister, Anyang' Nyong'o, now governor, Kisumu County, said that 68 billion is lost through corruption. He talked about the first financial year of President Kibaki's government. In 2010, Joseph Kinyua, then the permanent secretary, the Ministry of Finance, who deputized Uhuru Kenyatta, the then minister, said 270 billion of 1 trillion budget ends up in corruption. In 2021, President Uhuru Kenyatta caused concern when he said we'll lose 2 billion Kenya shillings daily. In 2016, the then EACC's Philip Kinisu also pointed out, saying that the Kenyan economy loses a third of its budget to corruption. These are also issues that have been pointed out by Transparency International, Bloomberg, the World Bank. And they have all expressed concerns about this. Yet yes. Where you sit in Parliament, you hear all this, you have all these reports, and these loopholes continue in existence, and the public covers are being stolen with Parliament's watch. What then can you do?
No. Let me tell you, Ayub, I can't agree more with you. It's not a secret in this country that now, if you left these things to Parliament, they will not go anywhere.
But you are not as helpless as me or Frank.
No, you know why we are saying...
You enjoy certain privileges.
You know, we enjoy, but what is happening?
Yeah.
And Ayub, you are more... Because we spend so much time with you in Parliament. You know, the thing is, when it comes to voting, the way we make decisions in Parliament...
Cows.
It's a matter of you vote yes or no. And the rule is always the majority will have their way. You've seen it. When we are debating here, we are so sober, we say this will not be voted for. Everybody says I'll be saying, you know, when it's come to the day of reckoning, people vote opposite what they have been saying. And because it's a vote which counts, that's why to me I'm very happy when I see guys out here applying more pressure. Because the truth of the matter is, the so-called opposition, which is the minority side, we don't have the numbers to overturn some of these. We'll have very good ideas, we'll prosecute them as we are doing, but when it comes to the day of voting, we'll whip all his members. And he knows it. Like, that's why last year he was bragging that he tapita mupende muspete, because he knows he has the numbers.
I'll come to you, Frank.
As he speaks, I want to learn from him what confidential expenditure is, because it's part of the, the conversation that we're having about the finance bill.
Yes, Honorable Soro.
First, I wanted to agree with the Honorable Makali Mulu, and this is quite surprising, I'm sure, for him, but I want to agree with him that as a country, I think we also need to have a conversation. We have the culture of bad manners. I mean, we sometimes we tend to be selfish, and not necessarily the ruling party or anything, but any person that gets a privilege to serve and across the country, and that you see across, whether it's in the National Assembly, whether it's in the county governments, there's a lot of wastage, and that is a conversation that we generally need to have. Because, for example, we are going to send 400 billion shillings to the counties. I'm on record in Parliament the other day saying that sometimes you even struggle to see what that 400 billion does. You really struggle. You'll need a microscope to see what that money does in counties, because you find the wage bill is very high and such kind of thing. So that's such a discussion that you can have on another day. But today, I wanted to challenge Honorable Makali. He sits in the budget committee. In that budget committee, he raised, with the other honorable colleagues, they raised the amount sent to the constituencies by about 10 billion. So each constituency will have an extra 30 million shillings. In this 4 trillion budget, they gave the NGAF people, National Government Affirmative Fund, that is the women reps, they added them 500 million shillings. So each women rep will have an extra amount for the county works. Then they added counties an extra 15 billion to come to a point of 400 billion mark. When they were doing all that adjustment and raising such, and they actually raised the amount to the education, for education, it's about 600 and something
54 billion.
Yes, by 54 billion. And they say it's for recruitment of teachers and such kind of, things to run. You raise all those things. Now, what is supposed to fund that is the finance bill. Because you can't look at such raise, because it sits in that finance committee in isolation. When you're raising this, then you must justify where you get this money from. Could Honorable Makali tell us, when they sit in the budget committee, as a committee, because now that is a different thing, because they sit, it's a small membership, where were they intending to get this additional budget from? Is it in the imagination of like loan or something, or where do you want to get it? Isn't it not to expand the tax base? Because that is the whole thing. Because for you to finance this extra amount of money, you've got to expand the tax base. There is no other factory that manufactures money now to fund this. Couldn't you have considered the pain, as you've said, of Kenyans, and say, let's maintain this and live within our means? Forget about these other expenditures. Even our own management as county leadership, as constituency leaders. Couldn't we have then said in the budget committee that we are not going to add 30 million, even if you're in the opposition? Say, we're not going to add 30 million to each constituency this year. Kenyans are suffering. Let's maintain what we are doing. Let's not add NGAF 500 million. Let's not add counties 15 billion. At least from the budget committee, so that at least we do not have to stretch members of the public in the finance committee. And apparently, even the members who are reading, members from the Azimio coalition who were seated reading the press yesterday and complaining, including Honorable Babu Wino, who sits in the budget committee.
Yeah, he does.
He sits in the budget committee. And when they were adding themselves that money, by themselves I mean members of parliament, 30 million. Where did they want government to get that money from, other than from the finance bill? Why are we playing populist politics? What other options do they have to fill that gap of the amount they added in the budget committee? Why?
And the committee comprises of all members of the
And the committee comprises of, and I'm very particular on Honorable Makali Mulu and Honorable Babu Wino, because they sit in that budget committee. They gave each member of parliament an extra 30 million in this 4 trillion budget, but they did not give their opinion on where we'll get this 30 million from. Loans Or how do we make this money?
And you are the government. I'll come to you, Dr. Makalimulo, because I'm looking at the...
I'll answer. I have the answer, by the way.
Yes.
Just give me the chance to answer you.
Yes, please. Okay, proceed then. Yeah.
You know, the thing is, Ayubu, sitting in the budget committee, what you do is you listen to what has been proposed by departments, by ministries through departmental committees.
Okay.
So the budget committee, normally what would happen is, it's more of a consolidation of what has come from departmental committees. And I'm sure Solo does sit in one of the departmental committees. The budget committee doesn't have a mandate when the water committee comes and says, this is what we have agreed with our ministry, to change it. And if you change it, you'll have problems. The things is singling out. They are the things you have actually used to ensure there is equity in the sharing of national resources. If you look at the CDF, it goes to all the 290 constituencies. If you look at the GAF, it goes to all the counties. So the thing is, because you have realized the issues of equity in this budget, the only way you can help some of the areas which are so, in quotes, to be in opposition, is by having this kind of allocations. So that by giving that million to every constituency in this country, you know that money will go to Kitui Central, where Makalimulo will always say no when it is supposed to be a no. It will go to Bakassi East, where Bab comes from. If they were given a chance to share the money without this, where we have a rule for every constituency, they will never give money to some constituencies. The same with GAF. But he's not mentioning, we have allocated 14.4 billion for electricity in every constituency.
Each constituency 50 million.
In the same attempt. Because we are saying, if you don't do it that way, Osoro is the whip and the government side, we'll have 200 million for electrification, while a constituency like another one in Nyanza will have zero. So what we have done as a budget committee, departments will bring their proposals, but we are also very concerned about issues of equity. What can we make to do to ensure that every part of this country, because we are all taxpayers, gets an allocation from their budget. That's why you see Ayubu assigned. And all said and done, Osoro and me, and I'm sure Mukwanju will agree, if Kenyans were given a choice between increasing CDF and some of the other funds, they will say increase CDF even 4 times. Because they can see the results.
That is true.
It's all over the place.
That was leading to my point.
So we are getting value for money. And what we have done is we are allocating resources where we think Kenyans are getting value for money.
And that was my argument.
But not necessarily.
I wanted to finish my argument.
I'll come to Franklin.
Yes, I wanted to finish my, and that forms the basis of my argument. So because of such an increase, and each constituency to get an allocation of 50 million for electricity, then we've got to expand our tax base. And I mean,
how do you achieve that?
That is the only thing. Okay. You find a way to finance that gap, that missing 30 million that wasn't in the budget. I'm explaining why, you know, Kenyans have been saying, why can't you use the last year's finance bill or finance act now? It is not possible because even then it couldn't meet the threshold, the set threshold. So we have to expand this tax base to find ways to add, to get more money to fund this 30 million. To get money to employ these teachers who are saying they are interns and they need to be permanent. And this we are going to do 46,000 teachers. And to also add an additional 20,000 teachers. I mean, parents, you've had parents all over complaining and saying, hey, gentlemen, you leaders, government, JSS with this education system that we have, they have a challenge of CBC. They have a challenge of 1 teacher per school. So government needs to employ 46,000
and this is the question then, Honorable Osoro. You talked about then expanding the tax base so that we collect more. Okay?
Yes.
What is the policy? What is the government strategy towards that?
Then this then does this. And this is, I'll take you back to what I've said. The strategy now of expanding the tax base is you have to balance within expanding the tax base so that you get more money, and also create employment. Find a way to make sure that everybody is employed. So what have we done in this finance bill? What we've done is that there is no excise duty in several raw materials. For example, we have farmers in Muranga and other parts of this country that rear chicken, and then they sell eggs. So that egg is called, when it gets to your table, it's called table egg. So can you imagine even locally, this, people rear chicken, but we still have people who import fish, eggs from Uganda and other countries. Eggs. Yet, we've got farmers that also have such kind of business that can sell here. What have we done? We are focusing on increasing production than increasing, we're actually focusing on increasing more on production so that people can be able to be employed. So what have we done? The eggs that are imported from outside the country for the table, table eggs, we've imposed excise duty. What does that mean? The local farmer in Muranga can be able now to have market in this country. He'll then be able to employ more, 2 or 3 people if he was alone. Then what we've done, we have removed this duty, excise duty, on eggs that are imported for hatching. What does that mean? We are raising production, focusing on production, so that we have more chicken across the country, for farmers. We have more chicken, but again, the table eggs you must buy locally. This finance bill focuses on increasing, or rather encouraging, manufacturers to set factories here, because there is no much excise duty, or other than the basic ones, on the raw materials. But on finished products, every finished product, including your favorite diaper that is from a different country, we must impose excise duty.
All right, then explain to the Kenyan public then, how much jobs can you create from the poultry industry?
Of course, too much. I really do not have the statistics at the moment. But ideally, over time, you'll agree with me that a farmer that has got 600 chicken right now, and his focus is on egg production right now for sale of within the market, he'll be able to get the market because his cost, his pricing of the egg remains constant on that pricing. He is now competitive in the market. The cheap eggs from Uganda will not be sold here, and that ideally means this guy will be encouraged to double such a hatchery of his, and that means he'll be able to employ 2 more people. The factory that is making a diaper in industrial area or any other place, they have not been imposed with any tax on eco levy. That factory.
Given the explanation that you have made, yes, hang on, because it seems that the attention is elsewhere. For example, PAR, the 2024 Economic Survey report, it shows that the informal sector created 720,000 jobs. Overall, the total number of jobs excluding small-scale farming and pastoralist activities grew from 19.1 million to 20 million in the year under the review, which was 2023. Why not bring these people into the fold?
But that is exactly what you are doing. By minimizing second-hand products or finished products importation from the other side, we are focusing on export more. We are focusing on our local production. And I think that is the message that I'm really struggling to make sure that Kenyans understand. When you say we've raised the price of diaper, and I even had, I saw the placards, people saying about sanitary pads and such kind of things. Have we even checked the standard of that, the quality of that sanitary pad that you use, or the diaper that you have your child use? Because you really do not know even where it was formed from. We have no structures as much to really qualify and quantify the standards of such. So what we are trying to do is this. Even that diaper that you like, because there is no excise duty on the raw materials, the manufacturer can come and set base here in industrial area. Because we are inviting the investors. You've heard you even saw the governor for Machako saying that, we need investors to invest here and everything.
Thank you.
That diaper that you like, the manufacturer will come and set base here in industrial area. He'll employ 300 people.
Thank you.
And will be able to export. Why would we depend on the other countries?
Okay, yes. Well, explained. Yes,
and that is why, by the way, the dollar is going low.
Okay. Yes,
I'll excuse Honorable Soro. He comes from a largely Koda area where bananas are the dominant crop. But for us who are the consumers and producers of chicken, we must have an opinion on this. and the issue here is that why our poultry products largely remain uncompetitive, is because the cost of feed is high. The cost, and this regime has been about subsidizing production, and we need to look into that. That's basic, Osoro. That it's about the cost of feed, then we can be able to compete. You cannot go compete with, even if you levy tax, you may actually continue to see that even with the tax, the trays of eggs from Tanzania and Uganda may still be cheaper than Kenyan, and we have to look at that. I want to respond to the issue of CDF.
Yeah.
The taproot of good governance is the rule of law. And if these legislators were really honest, then we would stick to the Supreme Court decision about the Constituency Development Fund. In as much as they have navigated using their powers to still bestow themselves that fund, it's okay. But now, it was more relevant before devolution. After devolution, I think we need to reorganize ourselves and make sure that instead of, splitting these monies, Osoro has his own bursary in his corner in Kisii. Mheshimiwa here has his own small bursary in Kitui Central. Why can't we organize such things at a more better level so that the needy ones access to it? My problem, actually, is with CDF. If you look at the issue of bursaries, for instance, Ayub, you realize that especially closer to election years, reason is thrown to the wind, where the legislators are keenly interested in spreading and interfacing. So you have a needy student with a fees of 10,000. Yes. They are given 2,000 shillings. How is that helpful? The parent has still to. So we need to look at the reasonability and feasibility of this instead of just saying, awarding ourselves money because we need to interface with the public.
Thank you, Franklin. Let's now...
Just two quick things which have not
I'll give you the final word. Let's sample the feedback and then get back to you. This is what we are saying on X-Citizen Daybreak and the hashtag that is on X. The SMS code is 22422. Okelo Mwalimu says, today I choose to celebrate the gallant and patriotic Kenyans who have braved all manner of threats and intimidation to put pressure on this oppressive regime. There's no way the oppressor can celebrate the result of this pressure. Patriot Okeo Mtata, back to you in the courtroom. The Duncan 254 says, why overtax us to fund KK opulence, increasing VAT on cancer treatment while increasing confidential expenditure in State House or the Deputy President's office is genocide. 2027 Tukutano Mugirango. The 18% tax proposals that were dropped showed some steps of good faith and consideration from this administration. However, I would have loved to see more proposals that directly affect the commoner at the lowest cadre of life dropped as well. Frank Orinde says the Kenya Kwanza government is undermining the power of the people. Double taxation, over-taxation, arrogance and chest thumping by the government will only unite the nation to fight back. The government should think of better ways of expanding the tax base as opposed to over-taxation. Godi Barasawere says the concessions on this punitive finance bill are artificial. This was a move by the Kenya Kwanza administration to appear as if it has softened its approach, but in reality there are tough tax measures still enveloped in the Kuria-led finance bill. Ogera 10 says, hi, Honorable Silvanus Osoro should be worried. I'm going to give him a run for his money in 2027. We have had enough of this regime. South Mugirango is going to be smoking. Engineer Lazaro says Honorable Osoro bill before Parliament can't be rectified by a section of party-affiliated MPs. The Kenya Kwanza regime to stop joking around with the minds of Kenyans. Please respect the freedom of the press, Kenya. Sam Masika _ says Osoro will not own up that pressure from Kenyans got them panicked. This National Assembly is an extension of the executive. In 2023, they did not listen to the views of Kenyans. That's why pushing them was necessary. The concession was because of protest. Bob Otieno Owino says democracy prevailed yesterday, but at the expense of the rich who led masses to protest against finance bill to continue evading tax payment. Vero Hasiko says, I am a taxpayer. I pay my taxes every 20th, and paying taxes is not an issue. The problem is bad governance, double taxation, over-taxation, arrogance, and chest thumping by the likes of Osoro. They want to spend our taxes on buying best brands, Gucci and Prada. Wale Shonko says the uproar by young people over the finance bill is a sign that the awakening period is here. It's not just about the bill itself, but the lack of visible benefits from the previous ones. Only time will tell if things will change. And the last one, Kiprono Abraham one says, we should be willing to build our nation using our resources and not rely on external borrowing. The government is obligated to ensure that the resources collected from the Kenyan people are prudently used. Parliament should oversight expenditure. Gentlemen, I am absolutely out of time, being told to get out. Thank you for your time. Franklin Mukwanja, the Executive Director, I am out of time. 30 seconds, please, then. You know,
there are two things which have been increased, which we never mentioned. Yeah. The import declaration fee has been increased from 2.5 to 2.3. The railway development levy has been increased from 1.5 to 2.5. These are some of the areas that have increased to finance the gap.
Thank you.
And they're also going to affect
finance
Kenyans.
CDF,
okay.
To finance projects, to finance...
Honorable sort of order. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Makali Mulu, Member of Parliament, Kitui Central Constituency, member of the National Assembly's Budget and Appropriations Committee, Franklin Mukwanja, the Executive Director, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and a disclaimer on him. He said he's not a Member of Parliament, but still continues to be flooded with messages of concern from Kenyans. Honorable Silvanus Osoro has unmiked himself, the lawmaker representing South Mugirango constituency, and as well the Chief Whip at the National Assembly. And a busy week and the calendar for Parliament starting today on Wednesday. And thank you for sending in your feedback here on Citizen Daybreak. The hashtag on X, the SMS code was 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Up next is Health and Lifestyle with Safin Acheng Oma, and Trevor Mbija will be here tomorrow morning by the grace of God. We'll see you on Friday by the grace of God as well. Thank you, good morning, and thanks for watching.